Hello. Hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the last week of Design at Large. It's been a really exciting quarter with technology, ethics, and I can't actually imagine a better person to close out the wide range of issues that we've been talking about this quarter than Nassim Parvin. Dr. Nassim Parvin is an assistant professor in the digital media program at Georgia Tech. She has a PhD in design from Carnegie Mellon University. Before that, she actually has a MS in information design and technology, also from Georgia Tech, and a bachelor's in electrical engineering from the University of Tehran. So is another person who journeyed from computer science through design, and also science and technology studies with me. So we've known each other for quite a long time. Nassim's work focuses on the ethical and political dimensions of design and technology, but especially thinking about how design methods, questions of digital storytelling, questions of what makes a smart technology, how do those questions relate to democracy and justice? And she practices this not only in her research, but also in her pedagogy. She was explaining this course that she has at Georgia Tech called the Science, Technology, and is it Science, Technology, and Society Studio? STS Studio, where people take what we call science studies here at UCSD and brings it together with design to help people make artifacts that think about society and power as they make the artifacts. She's also actually on the editorial board of a feminist Technoscience journal called Catalyst that was founded by Lisa Cartwright from Visual Arts, who's in this room, and she's an incoming co-editor on that. So she's somebody who's really leading the conversation on how feminism, human-computer interaction, and design can come together with taking society, power, and history really seriously and when we think about how to build transformations into the world. So thank you and welcome, and thanks for sharing your work with us.
Thank you so much, Lily, for that kind and generous introduction. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here. I'm excited to share my latest research. The title of the talk is Cars, Fashion, and the False Promise of Algorithmic Judgment. As you know or have heard by now, algorithms are everywhere. They are in our most mundane artifacts, such as our toothbrushes, and the most consequential, such as the drone weaponry. No matter where they are, they promise to be an extension of human judgment or even its replacement, which begs the question, what's at stake in the introduction of algorithms in everyday products? To answer this question, I will engage two very different products today, self-driving cars and algorithmic fashion assistants. In each case, I will argue that these artifacts are revealing of what we lose in our urge to surrender to algorithmic judgment. More specifically, I will be building on two recent works of mine. The first one came out in Science, Technology, and Human Values in 2018, titled Our Bodies in the Path of the Trolley, or Why Self-Driving Cars Must Not Be Programmed to Kill. And the other one should come out soon in Catalyst, titled Look Up and Smile, Seeing Through Alexa's Algorithmic Gaze. So check those out if you're interested in more details about these talks. So let's begin with cars. And for that, let's go back to October 2015, where MIT Technology Review came out with this article titled, Why Self-Driving Cars Must Be Programmed to Kill. And the argument of the paper was straightforward. It said, look, self-driving cars will save lives because they eliminate human errors such as texting and driving. But not all accidents can be avoided. There are times, such as the case of a pedestrian jumping in front of the car, that these cars need to make life and death decisions. Should they protect the life of the pedestrian or the lives of the people inside the car? And for this, we need to have a kind of algorithmic morality that can be based on majority responses to the trolley problem. Now, I will argue that this argument is flawed at all three steps of the process. But in order to make that argument, and for those of you in the audience who may not know what trolley problems are, here is a quick footnote on those. Trolley problems as thought experiments gained popularity in philosophic circles after feminist philosopher Philippa Foot talked about them in one of her papers in the 70s centered around abortion rights. And it's in their simplest form, the trolley problem goes something like this. Imagine you are a trolley driver going at 70 miles an hour. When you notice that your brakes do not work. Now, you also notice that there are 5 workers on the main track which you're on, but if you veer off to the side track, there is only 1 person on that. What should you do? Actually, what should you do? Should you veer off? To those of you who think that it's a good idea to veer off, maybe? Just a few people. Most people say it's good to veer off. It's better to save 5 people. It's better to just kill 1 person than the 5 people here. But but the situation is not as simple as it may seem. And sort of a variation of the trolley problem shows why. In this one, you are a bystander on a footbridge. And you realize that a trolley is coming and it seems to be out of control. At the same moment, you notice that there is a big guy next to you, and you can push him on the tracks to stop the trolley to save the 5 people. What would you do? And most people hesitate pushing the man in this scenario, although according to the utilitarian ethics, the net gains are the same. So these 2 scenarios are identical. Now, up until now, the scenarios of trolley problems have been used for philosophic debates, but these days they are being taken quite literally as templates for algorithmic morality, which is why we need to take them seriously. So the question is, should we program these algorithms based on majority responses to the trolley problem? Or more specifically, is it reasonable to assume that principles upheld by responses to variations of trolley problems are sufficient for resolving similar ethical situations when faced in real life? The answer to this question is no, and here is why. Notice how these thought experiments actually play a mind trick on us. By first and foremost putting us outside of these ethical situations. So they give us the God's point of view. And with that comes a sense of clarity about choices and outcomes. We know exactly what will happen and how in each of, as we take each course of action. But in real life, the situation is not that simple. These kinds of situations tend to be moving fast. We don't know what's happening. For example, maybe if I try harder, my brakes will start working. Maybe if I stay course, the 5 people here have seen me. They are clearing the track. Whereas if I move to the side track, the 1 person will be unfairly targeted. In the case of the man on the footbridge, what makes me think that I can push him at the right moment, at the right time to stop the trolley and save the other 5 people? And the other characteristic of these scenarios is that they are frozen in time. So there are no long-term consequences. There is no question about how am I going to be accountable to my family, his family, the 5 people in this scenario after the fact, even if the process is successful. So all of this to say that trolley problems exemplify a case of quandary ethics. In quandary ethics, parameters are predefined and choices are clear. Quandary ethics present us with snapshots frozen in time, assuming a view from nowhere, and there are no long-term ramifications. However, in real life, situations are uncertain and organic. They are in development. we act as ethical characters within them. We don't have the God's point of view. We are not outside judges. And finally, consequences are broad and long-ranging. So to go back to our question of is it reasonable to use, trolley problems as templates for algorithmic morality, the answer is no. And actually here I want to highlight that the second scenario that I mentioned is called the fat man and the footbridge scenario. And I want to highlight how the referent fat man is actually doing work to strip him from his humanity. And that is actually something that utilitarian ethics in its reductive forms does. It is to kind of frame situations in a way that makes us believe that it is okay to use some people as tools for our purposes. Notice that if I change the scenario, I give the man character and agency, then the question is, why am I not talking to him and deciding whether I am actually right in my judgment that the trolley is out of control, and also what he thinks we might be able to do together. Which then takes us to the second premise of this argument. The idea that we need to agree upon a set of principles so that we can program them in. So the question is, would identifying or agreeing on a set of principles be sufficient for creating moral algorithms that adequately control the behavior of self-driving cars? And the answer to this question is also no. Suppose in this room, we all agree on maximizing life as the core principle that we agree upon. And we define maximizing life in mathematic terms, just in order to make it easier to the mathematical logic of the algorithm. So in the case where you have one child on the one side and you have an older man on the other side, it seems straightforward. But what happens if you have two teenagers on one side and grandma pushing a stroller on the other side? The situation is not as simple as anymore. And what if we add to that the fact that the situation is organic and moving? What if I have a older person on one side who is pushing a walker very slowly, and 4 young adults on the other side who can clear the path of the self-driving car? What should the car do in that case? So in these very still simplistic scenarios, we see that the value of maximizing life is by no means sufficient to address these situations adequately. Moreover, we end up introducing biases, such as the case of, imagine you have a biker on one side who is wearing a helmet, and you have a biker on the other side who is not wearing a helmet. Does this principle mean that we always, that the self-driving car always targets people who are wearing a helmet? What if we add other parameters that are statistically significant for life expectancy, such as obesity, or if you're with a cigarette, should those things be, programmed in? And as you see, and we have seen in the context of other algorithms, you end up creating systemic biases that in this case have life and death consequences. So you end up targeting specific segments of the population disproportionately. So the answer to this question is also no, one, because of the built-in systemic biases, and also, again, back to the uncertainty of ethical situations. Which then takes us to the first premise of this article, this idea that, look, self-driving cars are going to save lives. There are many fatal accidents, 37,000 of them in 2017, and we will be able to avoid some of these deaths. Even though the system is not perfect, maybe we should adopt it anyway. Notice what is happening in this kind of framing. So the question is, should we accept algorithmic morality in the context of self-driving cars, given that by adopting them, in theory, we save more lives than we lose? Here, too, we are given another quandary, where choices are clear and outcomes are clear, too. And we are given the God's point of view, as if we know exactly how self-driving cars will behave or what self-driving cars are able to do in the future. Whereas in reality, we don't know that these cars will save lives. We are not sure that there are many blind spots, and there may be we may or may not save that many lives. Notice also that this kind of framing is blind to the fact that years of getting used to cars as the main mode of mobility is making us unable to see what else is possible. We are embedded in the situation, in other words. And a lot of these debates are driven by the interests of car companies and big technology companies. It is telling that we refer to this new technology as a car, which is kind of like if we were to refer to cars as horseless carriages. What if we begin to refer to this new technology as a killing robot? You see, immediately the terms of discourse change, and the kinds of discussions that we will be having around it change. But there is some work that is done by the fact that we refer to these technologies as cars, and we need to be mindful of that bias because we are in this situation. And finally, the consequences are long-ranging again. What is it like to live in a city where at every moment you can be the target of a killing robot? It is not just a matter of saving lives. We need to think about the fact that the livability of our cities is at stake. Would we all be leaving the house with a stroller in the morning just to trick the cars into believing that we are with a small child? So this is an inherently flawed argument that is nonetheless setting the terms of discourse. MIT's piece was based on an article that came in Science, was published in Science. It was later picked up by many media agencies. Some of you may have tweeted and retweeted some of those articles. And then later, variations of it was published in Science. And because of that, it's important that we take it very seriously, because the utilitarian framing that makes it seem that it is inevitable, even ethical, to sacrifice some lives to save others is obscuring our ability to see what is at stake with this new technology. But I would argue that if we change our starting point and take very seriously the lives that are lost in fatal accidents every year, we can actually break free from this kind of argument. A genuine caring concern with the many lives lost in car accidents now and in the future could serve as a starting point to rethink mobility as it connects to the design and livability of our cities. And that requires us to break free from the question of what is the best kill decision, which is the question that so many research labs are focused on, and instead open it up to thinking about the future of mobility in cities and how this new technology figures into the future of mobility. Of course, there is much that we don't know. But what is sure is that surrendering to algorithmic morality in the name of increased safety would be a grand failure of both our ethical and technical imagination. But not all algorithms are made to make life and death decisions. So let us examine a different domain of algorithmic judgment and see how they do. So in April 2017, Amazon introduced a new gadget. It's a small, it's this big, oval-shaped device equipped with a camera that's designed to give you a second opinion on your outfit when you need it. Let's take a look.
Alexa, do you have a rave tonight?
Alexa, what's on my calendar?
Alexa, turn the lights off.
Okay. Alexa helps with thousands of things, and now she can help you look your best.
Alexa, take a photo.
Introducing Echo Look, a first-of-its-kind Echo with a hands-free camera. Echo Look takes photos using just your voice. Its built-in lighting and depth-sensing camera lets you blur the backgrounds to make sure your outfits pop, giving you clean, full-length photos that are easy to share with friends. Plus, get a live view or take videos to see yourself from every angle.
Alexa, take a video.
We've also created an easy way to get a second opinion. Introducing Style Check. It combines the best in machine learning with advice for fashion specialists. Just pick 2 outfits and Style Check will leave you a recommendation based on current trends and what flatters you. Alexa can also help you create a personal lookbook. It shows you what you wore and when, so you can keep track of your favorites and take your closet with you, wherever you go.
Alexa, what's my commute?
The fastest route takes about 15 minutes.
Plus, Alexa is built in the cloud and always getting smarter, and so will Echo Look. Echo Look. Love your look every day.
Great, I'm sure you all want one. It's $200. So Echo Look's short promotional video fits well into the contemporary tech ad genre. The only difference is that it prominently features women aligned with modern ads for domestic technologies such as detergents and washing machines. Echo Look promises ease and fluidity of use, streamlined into the morning routine of the successful upper middle class woman who nonetheless needs help with her outfits. The ad's imagery reveal more of its assumptions. Her morning routine is not about scrambling to make coffee, to finish a report for work, or checking on a sick parent. What she needs is an inventory of the outfits she owns. She needs 360 videos to check for every imperfection, and she needs even more efficient ways to share her selfies with her friends. Echo Look, in doing so, extends the cultural and historical trajectory where women are framed to be just a sight. Its disciplinary gaze is aligned with what came before it. Think mirrors, cameras, photoshopped magazine images, selfies, and now this. It was also striking to see when I finally got this device and tried it in my studio, how the phrase look up and smile appears on the screen when you say, Alexa, take a picture. That fits squarely within a culture where being ladylike carries expectations of smiling with your chin up, sitting with ankles crossed, taking as little space as possible with movements that are non-threatening. It is also a reminder of street harassment for many of us. It is, of course, another device that enlists users to submit their most intimate data. If you want Alexa to get better at this, you want to share your data. And that's tied with legacies of gendered and racialized labor. And connects well with the dynamics and ideals of other crowdsourced platforms. Finally, Alexa comes with judgments that are mysteriously sourced, but they seem very authoritative. It was striking to me when I tried this again at my studio with colleagues and students, how many of them doubted their own choices. Is it because the jacket is too boxy, or is it that these patterns don't match? And in doing so, Alexa substantiates the pitfalls of a code that is simultaneously absolutist and relativistic. It is absolutist in the sense that it assumes that a universal set of principles could provide a basis for fashion choices. They undermine individual and cultural differences, as well as the deeply social and situated nature of fashion for dominant Western heteronormative notions of style and beauty. It is relativistic in the sense that it looks for majority opinion, all those likes, to identify and fix this universal code, elevating the already powerful voices. Echo Look's promotional video alludes to the theme of empowerment through imagery of women who appear confident about their looks, veiling the high price of its promise, being tethered to a device that reveals very little while demanding a whole lot. And predictably, Echo Look misses the point in a way that has something that has family resemblance to what we discussed with self-driving cars. To illustrate that, I want to share the story of Eva Haberg-Fischer, who wrote last year in New York Times an article titled "How I Learned to Look Believable." It's a brilliant article in which she, now Dr. Fischer, shares the story of what was it like to find, decide what to wear as she found herself in the peculiar situation of having to defend her sexual harassment case against her advisor. Again, I encourage you to read it. I can't do justice to it here, but a couple of points are relevant to this discussion. First and foremost, the fact that her situation is also marked by uncertainty, kind of like what we discussed with self-driving cars. The reason why she has to think twice about her clothes is the product of this uncertainty. And that uncertainty comes through in the fact that she struggles to capture what she needs as she's looking for clothes. In one store, she says, "I need something that'll make me look credible, but not super rich." How do you respond to that? In another instance, she says, "I need something that will help bring down the patriarchy." And the store owner, of course, has no response to that. In this manner, fashion and style emerge as ways of engaging, challenging, and inquiring about the world, not as a set of predefined criteria coded in algorithmic form. Paradoxically, for Fischer, the fact that her situation demands her to pay meticulous attention to her clothes is a direct product of the same patriarchy that she's attempting to destroy, thus a form of inquiry. And actually, there is this principle that she shares in the end, which is very troubling but familiar in these situations. You always want to stay just plausibly sexy enough to look like you could have been harassed, but 100% weren't asking for it. Try programming this one in. And not only does her journey develop as a way of questioning the social world and pushing back at it, but she's also upholding an ideal in all of this. She says, "I wish that we lived in a world where I could wear high-heeled, gold-detailed boots and be utterly reliable and credible, but the patriarchy is still too strong." In this manner, then each outfit marks a probe and a challenge into this world. It's a trace of, these are traces of her journey or her path of inquiry, if you will. But needless to say that Echo Look remains of no use at all for these situations when the question of what to wear is very real and of consequence. It is my hope, however, that Echo Look's introduction occasions the opportunity to see fashion for its substance as we interrogate algorithms' claim to reason, surfacing both their inadequacy and oppressive potency. Now, in both of these two cases, I showed that in making algorithms, we are also defining what we make of our bodies and how we shape our cities with profound experiential and social and political consequences. I would, however, argue that there is something even more consequential at stake. When we settle for algorithms to judge, what we are settling for is the idea that judgment is about selecting from a set of already established choices. Situations that demand judgment from us, however, are situations of uncertainty. The other side of uncertainty is possibility. And that's what makes these situations exciting and critical, not the least because it is how we advance both our theoretical and practical understanding. It is exciting to think about how we can use fashion to challenge patriarchy. It is exciting to think about how self-driving cars can be an occasion to rethink mobility in our cities. But somehow, in our quest for certainty, we are foregoing the realm of possibility and surrendering to algorithms to do everything. Surrendering to algorithms for judgment is to settle for a set of dead and predefined criteria that may or may not fit current circumstances. Surrendering to algorithmic judgment forecloses the realm of possibility, imagination, and ongoing inquiry. I would argue that it is both the symptom and cause of bankruptcy of ideas, and that we must resist it any way we can. Thank you.